Good evening. You're listening to the Xtreme Movie Show. Tonight's episode, Twin Peaks, on our Xtreme TV television review. We're doing Twin Peaks Season 3, Episode 16. I'm your host, Rob. Alongside me is that young 20-something millennial, along for a very first watch. And I got to sit there and say, Professor Pixel, that like we talked about with Season 2, how Season 1 ended pretty great, and Season 2 had its ups and downs, a lot of weird stuff. When David Lynch finally got back involved at the end after they had to reveal Laura Palmer's killer and deal with that whole angle, it really seemed like, okay, the game's afoot, to use an old Sherlock Holmes expression. And that's exactly how I feel about this episode. This episode was strong. We've only got 2 more episodes left after this. We've got a lot of big things in this that remind us of what original Twin Peaks really was for all the hardcore fans. And I got to say, the wait was worth it. Overall, very strong episode. It really, over the middle period of this season, kind of reminding me of Season 2 a little bit, where it's a little slow, picked up a lot. And I'm excited for the last 2. What's your initial take?
I agree, and I don't think I've been as excited as I am right now to talk about an episode of Twin Peaks this entire season. Because while we've had a lot of new, sometimes you gotta go back to your roots, and I think we're getting there. But of course, as I always say, the best way to talk about this episode is to go through this episode. So let's go ahead and start off. We're on a road. There's dark music, and we see Doppeldale and Richard. Eventually, they pull off onto this dirt road, and he has a radio in his hand as he stops the truck and goes ahead and gets out. And there's this weird sound in the area, and Richard asks Doppeldale, "So what now?" And Doppel says he'll find out if he pays attention. He's looking for a specific place. This place they're at by this very large stone that's just in the ground, this large rock, is that place given according to 2 coordinates he's been given.
Out of 3.
Out of 3. 2 out of 3 ain't bad, right?
Well, Meatloaf used to say that.
Yeah. And then we cut to, suddenly, this man running, and we see Jerry. And he sees the truck, and he looks, and he says, "People?" before pulling out his binoculars and looking at them through the wrong way. So he can't really see them, but he knows somebody's there. But then he seems to notice something. Doppeldale and Richard approach the rock, but Doppeldale stops and says, "I'm your elder. You're going to go up there with this device, and it'll beep when you're close, and then you'll hear a continuous noise when you are on the location." So the man, Richard, goes towards it. And as Jerry's watching from afar, the device is beeping as Richard's climbing on, and when he gets there, there's the continuous beep, and suddenly, light shoots out of him. And he is screaming before he disappears from existence. And Doppeldale looks up at the spot and sighs as he says, "Goodbye, my son," as Jerry is screaming, "What?" smashing the binoculars, saying they're bad. And Doppeldale, before he leaves, driving away, he texts all and a smiley face, or smiley face all, one way or another.
So, got Doppeldale looking at Richard, and he says, "Goodbye, my son." What'd you make of that?
Well, we do not know who Richard's father is, but we know Audrey is supposed to be his mother. So, to me, that's something screaming something at me that he might have been Doppeldale's son. And honestly, that could explain his behavior. If Doppeldale came back, had something with Audrey while she was there, and then before he disappeared for how long?
The apple does not fall far from the tree, as people like to say. and ignore Isaac Newton's contribution to that statement. That being said, the scene I thought was kind of interesting because we're getting that sense of Doppledale's on the march. He's getting closer to Twin Peaks where he needs to be. And these 3 coordinates that somehow he had gotten, 2 of them seem to match. So he's not sure. So he sacrifices this person, goodbye, my son. We'll see if that's got any meat on the bone here a little bit. But what brought it down to me actually was Jerry. We didn't need to see him at all in this episode. I thought the last time we saw him, it was during the day and he was running. And it looked like it was out of the woods. Here it's, 2 a.m., pitch black, whatever time it is. And of course, he's being stupid because he was high as a kite on mushrooms. And he's looking at the binoculars through the wrong way. And I'm a mark for when people, for the binocular spot that you don't see a lot more. You saw a lot more in like 70s action TV and some 80s stuff where you've got like the black lens, filter everything except what you're looking at. I always love that because it's got a little bit of a, I'm spying on you, voyeuristic thing to it. And Jerry kept looking at it through the wrong thing. I thought, Jerry, you're just not being properly utilized here in season 3. But that being said, I thought the disintegration was kind of cool. I was like, all right, this little fucker finally gets it, especially for murdering that kid, hitting him, and just being a bad dude all the way around. I will not miss him. So I don't know who moves up on my kill list next, if that's Chad in jail or what. But I'm glad to see this punk go. But going into the next scene, this next scene, or a similar one to it that happens pretty quick, where it makes me think like of this episode as being a collection of really good scenes rather than one long flowing story, because we're back at the residence of Dougie, and we see Chantal and the hitman are sitting there, and like I told you, she's always eating food, or if some of them, both of them are always eating, they're always talking about food or whatever. Hutch is there, and the 2 FBI cars come up, and it's filled with those guys. The one guy that's kind of like the lead dude, and he's an asshole with this really stupid underling guy. And we're not talking the other FBI guys, Champ Kind and all that. That would have been too much, really.
Wilson!
Yeah. It's really it's a setup scene for what's going to come. So we're like, oh yeah, these guys aren't dead. They're looking to kill Dougie Dale. What's going on? We're seeing all this. So the one part about this scene that I thought was just kind of neat, the way it was shot. There's sometimes a little bit of where they cut to where the camera's like in the van, but like towards the back of it, looking at them as they're looking forward. And maybe it's just a bit of acting. I don't know if it was improv or what, but he's talking about like some friend or something, and he's just sort of sitting there not saying too much. She takes her foot. She just puts up in his knee and he puts his hand on her like that, like, they're used to kind of doing this or whatever. Tim Roth's just an excellent actor to me, and I thought these two worked well together. I'm not seeing a lot of chemistry, but it's not like they don't. But I thought it worked well. But yeah, the whole purpose of this scene was the FBI guys were looking for Dougie Dale. Nobody seems to be at home, so he tells his little underling there to kind of, hey, get in your car, stake the place out, and we'll go to the insurance place where he works, which we know we've seen several times there too. But it's a small scene. The next scene, which I'll describe and then pause and hand it over to you, I think is an exceptional scene. And it's the scene, I'm simply going to say it, where Dougie Dale turns, because remember last time we saw him, he got shocked by sticking the fork in the electric socket. This is where Dougie Dale comes out of his coma, and he appears to be Dale Cooper. And his boss is there, his wife's there, his son is there, Sonny Jim. And then the brothers show up, and remember, he saved them a whole bunch of money. So now these thugs are like his best friend, and they're overdoing it, buying them the cars and everything. And I just think this is absolutely awesome. They come in, they've got the flowers. It's a really beautiful flower thing too. It's really cool. And then the 3 chicks come in, and they've got the finger sandwiches, and they're feeding the kid, and he's just laying there. I am popping hard. This is just such a great scene because there's nothing but a lot of love. It's just, I wasn't crazy about these guys with the 3 women following around. It was their shtick. I get it. But to me, this is where you do it. You send them up to be somewhat tough guys. You're not sure how tough they are or how real they are. But then you flip that script here late in season 3 here, where they're like super loyal to them, and we can see how much they can overdo it. It's kind of like having that annoying friend that really, really likes you, and you just want to say, go away. This is like the opposite, because he's got a great boss. Mullins, his boss, is literally about one of the only bosses I can think of recently in TV ever that seems to be a solid guy. And these guys too are businessmen first, I guess. But it's one of those things where I popped hard for this. It's really, really good. Right. So anyway, I might be jumping the gun on a couple of things here too, but it's very exciting because we're going to talk about what happens a lot here. But another great scene. What did you think?
No, I agree. I loved seeing them there. We saw Dougie on the bed, and he's in a coma right now. But as they're coming in with food and stuff, it goes right into another scene after we flash with Gordon Cole, and he's in a room with screens and lights and blah, 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 all set up.
And it's like he hears that electricity that we've seen it on the pole that had the numbers and other things too, but I don't know if it's quite the exact same thing. But you're right. The way this was edited, to me, it felt like one long scene, but you're absolutely right about that. Go ahead.
Well, we actually, after looking at Gordon Cole, we cut right back to Sonny Jim drinking a soda as they're all pretty much there, except the Meacham brothers have left. And he says he has to go to the bathroom, so his mother takes him real quickly. And Battling Bud is just there with Dougie as he gets a call from Phil. The FBI seem to be looking for Dougie, and they left the insurance company about 10 minutes ago. And Battling Bud just shakes his head. And I am going to go into this next scene, and
Absolutely.
then you can take us back to the hospital, because we see a car approach Dougie's home. There's a stakeout here, there, and everywhere, because you have the FBI agents right there. And then Chantal and her husband just sitting, waiting. And hubby starts just talking about a dead guy named Sammy. Do you remember that? That's when a limo passes right by. And it goes ahead and parks. And there's a van that follows, as it's, Dougie's bosses, or the Meacham brothers, who he actually helped out. They're just stocking up the place. They go in.
This is great.
And the limo doesn't leave, but the truck that's there, the van that does. And then a car from Zawoski Accounting pulls up to Chantal's van. And he complains that they're in his driveway. And suddenly, she's like, "Go away!" That's the kinder way of saying it. And so Zawoski, I'm assuming this guy's name is Zawoski, goes into his car and starts running it into Chantal's van. And she's saying, "What is he doing?" As she pulls out her gun and takes a shot. The guy gets out and he climbs towards the back of his car. And suddenly he pulls out a gun, and he's just shooting at them. Chantal seems to get hit, but they try to get away now. And that's when a machine gun from this guy in the Zawoski Accounting car just fills them with bullets as they're going away. And the Meacham brothers go out, and they have their guns as well, as Bradley asks, "What kind of neighborhood is this?" Then the FBI gets out. Chantal and her husband appear to be dead, as the car is just drifting until it hits a pole and just stops. The FBI gets out, they pull out their guns, and they tell the bald guy holding his machine gun to put the gun down, and he does. And that seems to be the end of that angle.
This scene was tremendous. I like a lot of stuff that happened in here. It's great because you're right. They're sitting here, and Hutch is talking about some dude he owed money to. Wasn't sure if he liked them or not, and she's just being real bitchy, acting like a cunt, just whatever. And you're like, "Oh, is it low blood sugar or like that?" But he goes old school. He goes, "Are you on a rag?" I mean, he actually plays the menstruation card. It's just like, what the fuck does it matter if I was? And that's when all this stuff starts happening. And reason why that might be significant is because this all has to do with civility. All right, so they're watching the place. They know that this other car with that doofus FBI agent are there. They're not sure who it is, but they see him pull up and park, several houses down. So it's just a little, we're waiting to see what's going on, and they kill on orders. They're not doing it indiscriminately or whatever. And so when this guy pulls up, I thought to myself, I remember early on when we were dealing with Dougie, and we saw pictures of the neighborhood, and it's upper middle class, and he's doing well, but had money issues, and we didn't know how long it was going to last or what the whole purpose of it was. So some people, I think, probably love this whole Dougie Dale angle and stuff. It's interesting. I don't hate it. But I remember when they were trying to put the hit on him, they blew the car up, and the piece went into some neighbor's house that like across the street. And I go, is this the same guy? Have we not seen this guy before? Because I just don't remember him. But two things. This Polish accountant has got, I think it's a white Mercedes. He has got, it's not the same color, but it's the sweet buttery leather jacket that I talked about Big Ed in like season 1 and how great the jackets were in Twin Peaks. Because, if you have one great jacket, you don't need anything else. And this guy comes out and he's got a shirt tie, but he looks like an Eastern mafioso kind of guy because he's got a pot belly, shaved head, and a real grim look. But he's like, you're in my driveway. And she's like, fuck you. She's just being rude. And if she was just civil, none of this would have happened. That's the whole point. And scenes like this, I think, are great because do they have anything to do with the rest of this show or any of it at all? I don't think so. Maybe it's a convenient way to tie loose ends. Maybe David Lynch had saw something like this before and filed it away and said, oh, I want to put this in. But it's weird to me because recently I was run off the road by a kid in a car last weekend, like at 8, 9 in the morning when I was out doing some shopping by a mall. And I had to slam my brakes and I almost ran off the side of the road. And it wasn't a big deal where I was at. But the kid was just indiscriminate about it and all that. And as soon as he went around my corner and I'm flipping the bird, I hear sirens. I'm like, oh shit. Cop goes around me because he was in a white unmarked car, which I've never seen down here in Central Florida ever. Pulls the kid over or whatever. And I was like, oh, thank God. I've never really felt like, these bastards get it enough of these young kids. But this guy, he's middle age. He's an accountant, so you think he's boring. But he just pulls out this like semi-automatic Glock thing, and the way he's walking and the way he's standing to the side and holding it and how he's getting at the other clip and bringing it up to actually change it out while the first one's being emptied. This dude knows what the hell he's doing. I'm like, is he hitting me? I was feeling bad. Like, did we forget this character earlier in the season? Because it was so dramatic. And the fact that she got winged, I thought was tremendous. And it's just this big shootout. They bump him to the ground and he lights up the van, and it appears to be the end of both of them because Hutch just gets lit up in the back, and we see him get about a dozen shots, and the van just slowly, literally rolls anticlimatically and comes to a stop and hits a telephone pole. And the FBI agents are like, but then the Mitchum brothers or whatever like that are standing outside watching all this, and they're like, oh, let's put our guns up and let's just get out of here. This is a great scene. It was unexpected. I popped hard for it. It was really, really, really good. I'll stop there and let you take the next scene because the next scene probably is the scene I felt like, everybody's been waiting for this whole season. So go ahead and take it now that we're back in the hospital.
Oh, you couldn't be more right. Because there's Dougie Dale. And soft ringing can suddenly be heard. And we see Battling Bud as he's standing there. His boss just is there. And at that moment, he heads right out. And that's when we see Dougie Dale wake up. He sits up. And who's there but in the chair? You're not sitting in the chair, mind you. If you have to look down into the chair. There's the one-armed man. And he's saying, are you awake? And Dougie Dale drops the Dougie. And he says, 100%. Dale is back. But the one-armed man still has information to give, saying that the other is still out there and to take this. And he shows the signet ring. The one with the mark that we've seen that's green and it kind of looks like a square with like 2 L's on it. That's the best way I can describe it.
It's that symbol that was on the map Hawk has.
Yes. And he goes ahead, he gives him the ring and shows the seed that Dale asks about. He says, do you have the seed? Oh, he says, okay, well, I'm going to need another. And he takes out a hair from his head and hands it to him. And that's when the one-armed man, he understands and he disappears. And that's when Janie and, well, Sonny Jim come back in, and Dale seems to know who they are while still being Dale. So he remembers his time as Dougie Dale.
Mm-hmm.
He says hello to them and asks Janie E to find a doctor. And his boss is also there and tells Dale that the FBI are, well, they're on their way. He says he's ready to get dressed and he will meet Sonny Jim and Janie E downstairs. And we actually get to see as Janie E takes her son and they're walking down the hall. Sonny Jim says, "Hey, Dad's talking a lot more." And that's when Dougie asks Bushnell, that's Badland Bud's real name, last name, for his gun. And he asks him to get the Meacham brothers on the phone. So his boss obliges, and he says that he's going to be bringing his family to the casino in 20 minutes. He's a plane to Spokane, Washington. And that's when Laura's theme starts coming up as the brothers say that, okay, we're gassing the plane right up. And Dale, at that moment, gives a message to Bushnell for Gordon Cole if he arrives after he's gone. And he thanks him for everything. Then Badland Bud asks him, but wait, what about the FBI? Cooper just looks at him and says, "I am the FBI," before he joins his family and he's driving away.
Wow, it's the one thing I wanted to point out in this particular scene here is that the acting with Dougie Dale, we got to see him kind of as like a mildly retarded individual, the way he would just repeat things, and I think that's just a part of the character and how nobody in his immediate world, his family particularly, or his boss, really seemed to notice or care whatever. And I thought that was an analogy for just being invisible. And you and I have talked about how it started off, and I really appreciated the less is more approach now that we have a few episodes left, because it gives you a big payoff here. Whereas if we had gotten Dale episode 1, 2, 3, or early on, or a lot of them, this wouldn't mean that much. So there's different ways you can choose to do it. And now I'm really starting to think of how these doppelgangers, these tulpas or whatever, now we know that now we know that they can be made. Now we know that they have been made. So the question then becomes, how many of them are there out there? Obviously, we know there's one with the good and the bad Dale. Maybe there'll be others. I can't imagine there's going to be just those two. And at the same time, with his boss, when he's going and talking to him, shaking his hand, they're playing the Twin Peaks theme. And I thought, it doesn't necessarily seem to match 100% to the scene, in that it makes you think of Laura Palmer in a town, but holy crap, it reminds you completely of, all those feelings that you had before. So smart editing choice, because to me, I imagine you could watch a scene with just them talking and the music would be fine, but no, they're deliberately playing this to remind you, just in case, you've been loading some sense of, well, is this real? No, it's the real deal. And the thing too is, it's just like his son says, hey, he's been talking a lot. It's great. It's kind of heartwarming. They get into the convertible Beamer that she's got, and they start driving off. We see her just kind of looking at him adoringly, I think is the word, and the son too. It's like they're proud that the father's now a bit more assertive and just more comfortable. Like, wow, Dad really can drive. It's a great scene. And like I said, sometimes scenes meld together and build. Sometimes they don't. This is not one of those episodes where they build. It's just now we're getting where all the major scenes are almost climaxes of these plot points too, no matter how fast or how slow they're going or how big or important some of them are. And tremendous scene. It's the scene everybody's been looking for 16 episodes, as far as I'm concerned too. But no, just the Polish account throws you off, and then you get this. So it's almost like a distraction away. You're so coming off that high of this incredible little shootout scene that, okay, now you're going to throw in the Dale coming back. Okay. So it's a nice little 1-2 kind of, rope-a-dope sort of thing. But the next scene is probably a better scene in that it explains a lot of what we've speculated before, because we see Diane at a bar having a smoke, and we know that she's not on the good side, because she's been in contact with evil Dale, and she puts in the string of numbers, puts them in. She's kind of really, really nervous. She's got a gun in her handbag, and she goes to see the 3 FBI agents. Was it Gordon, Albert, and Tammy, Miss Preston, that we haven't seen around. And she goes to talk about what happened. I think this is her best acting. She's obviously not in the show a lot, but always imagining her with Dale talking into the recorder back in the day, and then turning out to be kind of bitchy, I think was a nice little thing. And I've said that before earlier too. And some of these things are, like I say, are reaffirming some thoughts we've had or guesses, because I've said before that we get flip sides of the coin. Not everybody's perfect. We see different sides to them. She comes in and she sits down and she goes to tell them about what happened. She goes, I come into my room, it's at night. Dale's there. He's not knocking. He didn't use the doorbell. He was just there. We sat down on the couch. We started talking. He went to kiss me. It had happened once before, but when he did, it didn't feel right. And then she said she got raped by him. And you're like, oh, that's obviously the evil Dale that we're talking about. And of course, she brings up the old gas station that we've talked about that seems to appear or not appear, but that above it convenience store is where Mike and Bob seem to have a thing that moves. So we've got this supernatural location that seems to move. Is it the same location as the rock that we saw earlier in this episode, or other things? I don't know, because to me, Hawk's Map seems to have several important ones. And of course, we saw the one with the stones and the white goo that Cooper did go into a while before. And I'm not sure if that's the exact same place that Major Garland Briggs is involved in season 2. But the point is it's really explaining some stuff where we go, okay. But she gets this weird look on her face or whatever, and her voice kind of softens. And she's like, I'm not mean. She takes her gun out. She gets shot by Albert and Tammy. They just load up on her, which I don't know if this is intentional, because, and then I'm not going to say the editing's bad, because there's been some good effects in here, but you see no bullet holes. You see no blood. You see nothing, because it looks like she just disappears. And they definitely open fire on her. But of course, Miss Preston, the hot one, says, oh, she was a tulpa. And she reminds us of this idea that they had talked about before. And we're left there with Gordon kind of watching everything, saying, well, what do you mean by the sheriff's station? This was a fantastic scene. I'm not going to say it's the best scene in the whole episode, but certainly I think emotionally one of the strongest. It's one of the best acted ones, too. We've had some artsy scenes. We've had some fun scenes. We've had some whatever scenes that pissed us off. This was a great scene for her. I'm glad she got it as an actress. It worked perfectly.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree. And
before you give your thoughts, I just want to ask you a question. Maybe you can integrate your answer into your description here. The music, I think, was supposed to be somebody's version of American Woman, and it was very industrial.
It's David Lynch's American Woman.
Okay, so it's definitely different. And I'm like, okay, what's going on? It was very weird and disturbing, and it worked.
Yeah, no, I do get that. It played earlier this season. Actually, in that first episode where we see Doppeldale, whenever he's driving, that's what's playing, and it came back here. But speaking of music, actually, we get to hear the original Red Room theme, as it were. I guess that's the best way to say it. As after Diane does indeed disappear, because, well, she was a tulpa, she appears in the Red Room. The one-armed man says someone made her. And she knows. She absolutely knows. She's not like Dougie Dale. She knows what she is. And then her jaw seems to crack before her face starts to crack. And then it just seems to explode as what comes from her? A seed. A shiny gold ball. But there's actually, from there, we go back to Dale once again, which I'm glad, of course, as they arrive at the Silver Mustang Casino. And the brothers are happy to see him. And everybody notices how he's different now. And Janie asks where they're going, and Cooper looks at them and asks the brothers for a minute. And he takes Sonny Jim and Janie aside, and he says he's got to go away for a little while. But the two of them have made his heart so full. And he looks at Sonny Jim and says that Dougie, and that's a slip up. He tries to correct himself. He says that I'll be back. And Sonny Jim's like, you're not my dad? And Dale tries to throw that aside. He's saying, no, I'm your dad, Sonny Jim, but I do have to go. And he'll see them soon when he comes through that red door once again. And then he'll be there for good. And Janie begs him not to go as he's trying to walk away, but he says he has to. And Janie gives him a kiss and then says, whoever you are, thank you. Then Cooper's with the brothers as they go out into the limo. And it skips a little bit because they know that, let me get this straight, one of them says. So you don't sell insurance. You're an FBI agent that's been missing for 25 years. And you need to get to this town called Twin Peaks. And they express that they're not very comfortable with that, as they're not really welcome with those kinds of people. But Cooper says, well, that's all about to change, because in the time that he's been with them, he has seen that the two of them have hearts of gold. And that's when we cut away.
Another strong scene again here too. It's I was just amazed. It's like, it's like getting into a rhythm and everybody's hitting singles and doubles, and you're going, I'm gonna have to pull the pitcher if you're a baseball guy. It was really really fun watching this because these guys seem to have some general affection. I thought, them being pals with him, it seems like the brothers, that's the role that they were destined for. And I didn't really see it earlier. So I feel kind of stupid, especially with everybody being, like I say, flip sides of things too. They know they're going to Spokane or whatever on the plane. And of course you realize that Dale, the real Dale, who seems to be consciously back in this, in Dougie Dale's body, how he's a fast thinker and he thinks on his feet. And walking into the middle of the casino that we saw him beginning of the season with all the slot machines and giving a heartfelt speech there, it's kind of discombobulating, but it's effective and it works. And it made me think though about, okay, if we have a tulpa, which is a doppelganger, then that implies two bodies, right? So we see it with, Dale and Dougie Dale, but somehow we've got the real Dale in this essence here, when we know that he had left the box early on to get back, and I guess was supposed to come back to this body. And then where's Dougie Dale? We don't know, but it's like he got into the body, but Dougie Dale was still there. So it's almost a little confusing in that. But then we have Diane earlier in this episode, just a few scenes ago, where I think we can imply that she was a tulpa, obviously, because of her essence got boiled down there in the room. And it seemed like the one-armed man did not know that somebody created her. So that means it's not just up to him. It's a process that people can get into. And when I say people, we know that there's only certain people that have this affinity for, being in the red room. And I don't know if you have to go through the Black Lodge to get there and do it, or the white one that we've heard about. That's the good one. So I'm not saying it's confusing so much as I think this is going to be a significant concept going towards the end here, because instead of who shot Laura Palmer and us looking for the killer and them having to fill in time, here we go. Well, Dale seems to be back. We can surmise that the sample he gave the one-armed man is going to make Dougie, and that somehow Dougie's essence is going to go into that physique and go back to this family to make him happy. Yet where's real Dale going to go? I don't know. But like I say, it's those things that you immediately think of with the way all these scenes end, that you're like, okay, we're really getting close to the end of this entire show. And I think it's done very well. A part of me was almost sad in a way because I thought her. First, I thought she was a strong woman, keeping the family together. Then I thought, oh, she's a manipulative woman. She only got nice and did things when she got a lot of money, realized that financially independent. Now she seems like she might have been in love with Dale rather than Dougie Dale, who is a different person. So whatever, I'm overthinking it. But the scene where they're driving off and he explains to them about being friends and total Dale here, the way he talks to them. Uh, the girls are all sitting there serving the Bloody Marys and everything. They just seem like bros, all of them. This was just a really cute scene here too about having a heart of gold and driving down the Vegas Strip, getting ready to get to the plane. It's not a long scene, but it really does well. But I will say this going into last scene. In the last scene, we have music playing by a relative nobody or an independent person. I'm not denigrating their chosen profession, as it were, but that was a mechanic in these episodes that you and I were like, well, that's nice. Other than the Nine Inch Nails one, I didn't really care for any of these because sometimes things happen. Most of the time they didn't. It was just an excuse to have a platform to put people you like and you're interested in. Okay, I get it, but I think the symbol is that we don't really care. That being said, this guy's naturally talented, got a nice voice. I'm not a crazy fan of him, but I thought his performance stood out. Reason why I'm mentioning it is because they give this guy a lot of time. I'm like, wait a minute, there's still 7-8 minutes left in the episodes. I think the worst transgression we've had has been 5 minutes where they played something and then rolled the credits. But no, we see Audrey coming in and we're like, oh, they did make it out of their house. They are going in there looking for was it Billy, her lover? Which I'm like, why would you do that? So Charlie seems to be very polite. He's guiding her over to the bar. He's ordering some martinis, and he wants to drink to us. And she's like, to Billy, like, fuck you, So it's her attitude or whatever. The song's playing, and then the older gentleman who had been doing some introductions that we've seen comes up and says, "Okay, I'd like to introduce to you to Audrey's dance." And they play that jazzy tune that back in the day when this was live and on weekly episodes on regular TV, everyone talked about how this is weird because this is the exact same music that Audrey, when she was younger, got up and played in front of the jukebox. And we see her, and she's done very well with what limited screen time she's had in this thing. She goes into that trance. She goes up. Obviously, she's 25 years older. She's still attractive, fit, well dressed, whatever. Charlie's watching her and doesn't say anything. It's real quiet. And she just does a great job of capturing that old spirit because she's not that young 18, 19-year-old character. And how she was that old in real life. She'd be in her 40s now as an actress, even older. And she nails it out there on a dance floor all by herself, the spotlight and people kind of checking it out and stuff. And I thought, okay, if you're not vibing it now, feeling like you're back in Twin Peaks and things really have that emotional connection, then you're dead. That's kind of how I took it. And for all the same reasons we said about Dale coming back, because less is more. We did not get her till the end. So it looked like he saved an ace in his pocket to play towards the end or whatever. And smart choice, I think, in that way, rather than give us everybody, except in the middle towards the end of it, you get some guy bashing a ball in his head, and that's it. Except it seems to waken her out of her trance because we see Audrey, it looks like in a white room, looking like in a makeup mirror, kind of yelling at herself. And it's like, oh, she's got a white shirt on. And we can only see her from like the neck up. So it's like, is she in a psych ward? Is she just doing this? Is she in another place? Is this Audrey that we see out here at Tulpa? I don't think so. I don't know. But it's a nice way to kind of go, okay, now back to reality with the beer, the beer bottle breaking over somebody's head. But she's like, Charlie, get me out of here. And then immediately, bam, cuts to this. And that's very shocking. And end episode. Great way to end. I thought this is a tremendous episode. Great scene to end on too. Damn it, it feels like it's ready to just blow up big. It feels like season 1 to me right now. What's your take on these last scenes here?
Yeah, no, I agree because as there's the scream at Monique and a fight breaks out, Audrey begs to be let out of there before what she is, like said, in the white room. And I wondered the exact same thing. Is she somewhere else or is she in a psych ward? Which is
psych
it? I mean,
what it looks like, doesn't it?
A little bit, but I don't think they would allow somebody in a psych ward to have a mirror. Um,
True. No, that's absolutely true. And while I'm looking at the credits here right now, this guy performing, you know who the hell he is? You weren't even born when he was popular. It's Eddie Vedder. Even flow. I'm like, holy crap. I just saw that just now. I was like, and the credits started rolling. I was seeing if there's anything at the end. Eddie Vedder. Do you even know who I'm
yeah,
talking about?
no, not really.
You
It's
are like
okay.
the early 20s, so trying to get too personal in here, but the idea of letting everybody know what Twin Peaks being a first watch for everybody is that we don't know what's going on here. I watched this live, season 1 and season 2, and then you or I are doing season 3's first watch, and we're getting towards the end. But Eddie Vedder, God, if you're 20 something, then you were born way past this prime. So you'd have been born roughly 2000. I'm not asking you to be specific, and I'm not even suggesting you be that way, but my goodness, never heard of
A little
Even Flow.
earlier, uh, but no, as they're playing the version of Audrey's dance, it was perfect. It was the perfect way to do credits. You don't have some random singing coming is just coming at us, which it has nothing to do with this episode. And actually talking about that with this scene starting with the random person singing, there were a few lines of that song that to me applied to the idea of tulpas. It was talking about your being your true self and having another half and stuff from what I remember.
Yeah.
That's not in the notes, that's just from my memory, but with how this ends, it's perfect. And this entire episode is so worth the long road here because there have been so many steps that seem to just be pulling away, and it's just getting messy left, right, and center. But now it's all coming together. Everything is tying into this moment, and I'm so ready to get into these final 2 episodes.
Yeah, and one of the things too, kind of tying up some loose ends here is I mentioned that I thought the music was pretty strong in here too. We got some of the dark music. We haven't had a lot of the synth type scoring that to me was very prevalent, at least in season 1. And I keep going back to when Renette Pulaski was coming across the tracks and some of that stuff that just made it so haunting. I felt like it was noticeably different in this episode where it seemed like some of these things were coming back because we've seen obviously Laura Steen being played at the beginning, and it's nice. We're used to seeing her picture at the end and all that. Instead, we're getting it here. Um, and the end that we said it's not really significant as far as what happens. Last time we were talking about an episode, we had this young ethnic looking woman, I think she was Asian or something, with glasses, if I recall, crawling around the floor because I don't know, she got mad that these 2 guys picked her up and sat in her seat. It's just nonsensical, non sequitur stuff that really has no inherent value to the episode in and of itself. Like I say, it's just a platform to put a lot of independent musicians. And I remember, okay, I know that's 9 Inch Nails. Okay, these are a bunch of women that we've seen twice, and here's some other ones that have various degrees of musicianship and what they're doing. And it works because we're in a place where that stuff would seem reasonable to play. But I'm still kind of stunned here a little bit because the band that Eddie Vedder was in was Pearl Jam. And one thing we talk about here on the Xtreme Movie Show, even though we cover movies primarily, I like to say we're 80s based, and we branch out into some special TV. And of course, this was an 80s TV show. It was really Pearl Jam, Nirvana, and a few others that all of a sudden changed from the what people refer to as the hair metal bands and pop rock bands of the 80s to what some people think is the death of music because it went mostly grunge, and that whole scene got really popular because of all them. And if you don't know Pearl Jam and you're young, holy crap, they were so massive. Now, to me, they weren't as musical as other acts are out there, and you don't have to be good and to be popular or whatever. But yeah, everybody knows Even Flow and other things that he did, and I'm just shocked because I'm old enough to remember all that as it went on, just how huge it was, and how all of a sudden overnight the 80s shtick seemed to change with it. And a show like this, while done very well, kind of got crapped out in season 2 because of ABC, I believe it was. The network basically saying, no, you need to do it this way, and doing it. It's like a similar thing happened in music industry because people your age, to this day still say, well, what was going on with the 80s? And it seems like that whole 80s vibe, whether it's the synth wave movement coming out, whether it's just the whole 80s retro stuff, people my age were showing their kids the Goonies and those things make it still popular. Usually there's that generational shift where in the 80s stuff from the 50s and 60s was popular. Now it's stuff from the 80s. But I still keep thinking that in the 90s there's going to be a very small amount of material that people are going to use from. And I was a little shocked that they were able to get somebody like Eddie Vedder in here. So that's, hey, +1 for them. I just didn't catch it when it came around. He's a lot older. And I was not a big Pearl Jam fan. I thought his voice was very and I'm not a fan of people like that don't try to go to a higher level with their act or whatever. I like people that bring it. I don't like people that go, well, we don't have to do this. We can only play 2 or 3 chords and we're done. That being said, that's all music is today. Why is this relevant? Because that's what TV is today. And you and I have talked about this a lot here on the Xtreme Movie Show, especially saying our Rocky franchise review that we're doing and getting ready to do episode 4. Is there a need for a director's cut? Who's to say? But the thing is we know that there's a certain template with the Rocky movies. We're going to talk about how it's good and how it's different now. As somebody likes Stallone that has a template can at least give you something as a viewer, you know what to expect. Lynch here in season 3 is giving us something we didn't expect. Is it Twin Peaks? Is it not? We're going to definitely talk about that here at the end as we complete these 2 episodes and see, do we come to a conclusion? Do they leave things hanging like they've done every season? Never say never. As anybody would say, as far as the season 4. But this episode, to your point, going back to the beginning, super strong, super excited to see the rest. Any final thoughts from your observations about not just this episode, anything about season 3 you want to get out?
Not really. All I can do is just say what I've said before. Reiterate that I'm just so excited to see the end here, and I'm glad to be excited about Twin Peaks.
Does it make you feel like you've been strung along now? All of a sudden they flip the switch?
Just a little bit. I've been seeing the turn come for the past couple episodes, but now that we're actually here, it's great.
Okay. Well, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Twin Peaks, season 3, episode 16, 2 left. We're hopefully going out on a strong note too. So join us next week when we drop that episode and talk about it. Hopefully it's just as exciting or even better than this one here too. I'm really looking forward to it. I know Professor Pixel is. And for everybody out there, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening, getting the word out. And as always, have a good night and stay extreme.